Welcome back to Coaches Exploring Clarity. In today's episode, we'll be looking at Chapter 15, Resilience, which starts with a quote from Confucius. Our greatest glory is not in never failing, but in rising every time we fail. Oh, sorry, my eyes have gone buggy on me. I need glasses, I think, reading glasses. Our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. Talk about a mind bend.
Let's discuss those two things, actually. That's cool.
What a way to start.
Greg just rewrote Confucius. Yeah. Way to go, Greg.
He didn't really know what he was talking about.
Exactly.
What did he know?
He probably meant failing. He just had a typo or something.
Yeah, didn't know.
That's funny. Freudian slip, they call that, I guess, right? Anyways, this morning when I read that over again and clearly read it wrong, I was reminded yesterday somebody in one of my groups posted an article about, this was a phrase I'd never heard before. It was creative mortification, but it was basically about how in the creative process, if you're heavily criticized or if you, I guess, take criticism poorly, how it can kind of derail or stunt or curb your creativity going forward. And I was reminded of a story from when I was 7 in grade 2. And our school was having a pumpkin carving contest for Halloween. And so my parents went out and bought my brother and I pumpkins. And I don't remember, I mean, I was only 7, so they must have helped carve them. I don't know, but they basically left the design to us. So we just carved like the kind of pumpkins you would expect from a 7 and 8-year-old, like, you know, triangle eyes and jaggedy teeth and whatever. And we thought they were fantastic. Couldn't wait to get them to school to be, you know, put into this contest. And I remember walking in the gymnasium with my pumpkin and seeing these pumpkins that were like incredible. And the one that popped to mind was somebody did a King Tut pumpkin. So it was all painted gold and it had like the whole elaborate headdress. And I just wanted to throw my pumpkin in the garbage and like run home. It was just such a like humiliating embarrassment. So like that story came to mind, although, you know, I spent a lot of the day yesterday reflecting on it, going like, I don't recall that ever really hindering me from being creative. So, you know, and I don't remember, like, obviously my parents must have done a good job of consoling me or talking me off the ledge or whatever it was. But it really rang true with this idea of resilience. Like there I was, 7-year-olds with this, you know, terrible experience by all accounts. And yet it you know, to the best of my recollection, it just rolled off my back like, you know, water off a duck's back, as they say. It's so anyway, that's just what was kind of fresh and new for me yesterday. It was the first time I thought about that in over 40 years anyway. So
yeah. Strikes me as well, just as you were speaking, how like, again, this is kind of an opinion, but I'm going to say the new generations, and it looks like parents spend a hell of a lot of time not allowing their kids to fall over and keeping them safe from that. And it looks to me like there's a lot of people now on this planet who are totally, you know, ill-equipped to be able to rise again because they've never been taught how to do it.
Yeah.
And just, you know, as the numbers in depression and people in prison and all the rest of it are rising, it seems to be sort of coherent to the number of people who are actually never, you know, allowed to get back up again because they're not even allowed to be in a situation where they're falling. Yeah, which is kind of interesting. You know?
The bubble wrap generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what came up for me when you just said that, Elaine, was taking it even a step further. And I have quite a few examples of conversations with people lately where they've brought something into their adulthood from their childhood. So there, if we go to your example, Greg, that could easily have gone two ways. If you'd gone home and your parents were like, "Oh, poor baby, but we love your pumpkin," and they probably went, "Oh, dude, it's fine, you know,
Yeah.
you've forgotten about it." But if it gone the other way, and you know what they were doing was preventing you from having feelings of, oh, you know, inadequate isn't a word a 7-year-old child would use, but you know, any feelings that they were afraid of you having if they'd gone into all of that. And I have so many examples of that now, where in conversations with people who are adults, and they're saying, you know, it goes back to, oh yeah, when I was 9, this is a real one from last week, when I was 9, this thing happened, and ever since then something has to be in place before X. And it's like, because I felt this, and my parents tried for me not to feel that again. Essentially, that's really what it was. It's the same, you know, let's not feel upset, disappointed, hurt, inadequate with the pumpkin. And I think, I don't know if it's a generational thing. It certainly, I can't remember it happened in my house. So I think it was
just as you guys were saying that, I had like this vision of my dad just telling me to suck it up. Like, get over it.
It was kind of like that, wasn't it? Or
Yeah,
even here, well, I don't know what it's like in Italy, Elaine, but when children fall over in the street here, any kid, any Spanish child falls over, people just ignore them. Without exception, you hardly, I think once in all the years I've lived here, have I seen, you know, people rush to a child who had fallen over. And as a result, the kid kind of goes, you know, wobbles back up and on it goes. But the other way, when it's like, oh, you know, they cry. So I guess it's a great, I hadn't really thought about that little quote, but it brings up loads.
And it happens exactly the opposite here in Italy, I must say that. And it didn't, of course, happen to me, you know, in my early years in the UK. It was more, you know, much more like, Greg's, I'll just get on with it. Or even the sad truth was that your parents weren't around anyway, so you had to sort yourself out. You know what I mean? Because you were probably doing something you shouldn't have been doing anyway, and you've kind of fallen into some gigantic hole, or God knows what else, or you think like your parents just weren't there. But I was just thinking how, in the same way, like on a physical sort of resilience side, and how brilliant our, you know, physical systems are made for healing, for dealing with anything. I was reading an article about the difference between, written by an immunologist, difference between kids in like a British culture, so include Americans, Canadians, and you know such like, and an Italian or more Mediterranean culture. And apparently, in the Mediterranean culture, there's a much higher case of like kids not being, cannot be cured anymore by antibiotics because they have a high resistance, because you know, the parents are shoving antibiotics down their throats for no apparent reason at all. And like you very, very young children, like, I mean, as I remember, as a very young, or if not told, or if not, I have photographic evidence, and it's not just me, it seems to be everybody. Like in the UK, you know, your parents would just kind of, even when you were about, you just learned to crawl, and you'd be out in the garden, and you'd be, you know, ruminating on the grass along with my, you know, rabbits. It would be like that, and you'd have your hands in the mud, and then the next thing would be your hands would be straight in your mouth, and so on. Now, Italian kids aren't allowed to do that. So they're whisked away from it and severely cleansed, you know, at the sign of even at the sign of things. And apparently they have a lesser resistance. Their immune system doesn't work as well as a UK immune system works because of that. So like if the immune system is your resistance, you know, it's your ability to be able to protect, heal, and climb back up again and get back into good health, get back on your feet, so they say. You know, that's kind of interesting as well. But the potential, what's interesting, of course, is that the basic potential is always there of resistance. Like, it's not as though the immune system suddenly falls out of your body or something. It's always there, and it will work for you if you allow it to work.
And I guess that's the same for our psychological immune system. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, what you've just described is like an example of, you know, the wisdom and intelligence of our system is context sensitive. Like it knows what it needs to do given the circumstances around it.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, and like responds to the circumstance, you know, and sort of can rise over and beyond what your thoughts, so that in this case the parents, you know, think that this is a dirty thing and will harm your child. The thought, the erroneous thought, is making the parent do, in this case, sort of thing. But the body and the psychological immune system, the resilience that's within you anyway, will tend to survival to well-being and getting over it and sorting it out, kind of thing. Anyway, yeah.
We got a lot out of that one little quote that I
yeah.
Falling, failing. Yeah, we're going all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. Letting the mind wander.
The next thing here that I got a good chuckle out of was the story about the two guys that fell into the void, the touching the void story.
Yeah.
Because I remember watching the movie about that, and I actually went back to, because it's not in this story that Jamie recounts here, but I remember this one part of it, and I went back on and found it on YouTube to make sure that I wasn't imagining it. But the story is when the guy was lying there basically thinking he was going to die, and then this song from Boney M, Brown Girl in the Rain, popped into his head, and it kept repeating and repeating, and he friggin' hated that song. and he decided, I'm not going to die with this stupid song in my head. So he basically dragged himself back to camp. And it makes me laugh because one of our family Christmas traditions that started when I was a kid was the very first Christmas music we put on as we're start decorating the house is the Boney M Christmas album. It's like our family favorite. So the fact that like I love Boney M, and this guy like hates Boney M, or at least that song, so much that he refused to die with that. But it was kind of this idea too of the intelligence and wisdom behind life, knew exactly what he needed to motivate him through he just as easily could have just laid there and died. I mean, most people probably would have. Anyway, I just every time I come across this story, it just makes me laugh.
Yeah, just the idea also that he like allowed it to come to him. Kind of thinking in that kind of circumstance, that would be the last thing that would, you know, me sitting here in my little comfy home, it's kind of the last thing that's going to come to mind. A song that I don't like.
Yeah.
You know, I'm kind of thinking, well, send me the angels and give me a harp, you know, because it looks like I'm on my last legs kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yet, no, what did wisdom do? Something like, this is really irritating. I'm not having this at my funeral. You know?
Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant.
It was brilliant. Yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he goes on to talk about sleepwalking. I so get that. But it was kind of almost relieving, because I find that my personal example of sleepwalking that I do indeed notice myself doing from time to time still, it's sort of calming to think that as far as Jamie's concerned, a huge number of people actually sleepwalk through life. That was kind of, but it was also nice to see the other side, that that you don't have to, it doesn't have to be like that, and it doesn't mean that that's just the way you are. It doesn't mean there's even something wrong with you.
Mm.
But and whatever, like my sleepwalking, as I look back on it, used to look like, oh my goodness, this might be a beginning of Alzheimer's because I seem to have a foggy brain sort of thing.
Mm.
But actually that was just the awareness of it. Indeed, that was already the realization, oh, there's something needs to be looked at here. It's kind of interesting. It's the awareness of it. So and yes, as Jamie said, that's it. No matter how, Jamie says, no matter how real and compelling our perceptual reality sometimes sometimes seem. So like it looked to me like I was either on the brink of Alzheimer's or like I was just sort of foggy brained. I'd never get out of this and I'd never learn anything, hopeless. It was that realization on reading this that, oh, there's always something else there. World, and Jamie says, a world of deeper experience is just below the surface. That's like, that's so freeing just to know that it's okay. And it's okay either way. This is what these paragraphs gave to me.
Yeah.
It's okay actually either way.
Yeah, I think when I read that, I think for me it seems to say that, well, says to me that no matter how self-aware we become, there are always going to be moments of sleepwalking. It's just an element of who we are, I suppose, when we're not conscious to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I took from it.
Yeah, the whole idea. I mean, this ties in a lot with the other course that Elaine and I are in, the finding your unique expression. What is your purpose in life? And I think of myself having sleepwalked through most of my life in terms of doing what I was supposed to do, in terms, go to school, then go to university, then get a job in the field that I studied for, get a promotion, get the next promotion, et cetera, et cetera. And next thing you know, I was almost 50 and sleepwalked through most of my life doing what I was told. And now my kids are at that early stage where they're deciding what to take in university and so on. And I'm starting to question to myself, like, as I'm trying to do my parental role of guiding them and giving them advice and stuff, it was like, part of me wants to just scream, like, run the other way. Like, don't get trapped in this, path that society says you have to take. You can forge your own path versus what we get caught up in is this is how life is supposed to work, or this is the safe, secure path to take. Like, you've got, like, if you have the opportunity to go to university, like, you have to go. Like, you'd be ruining your life if you didn't go, kind of thing. So it's been interesting for me to kind of wrestle with that in the last year or so. And I mentioned all that, and I still don't know what the hell the right answer is. Or probably there isn't one, but anyway, it's interesting. And I think that's kind of at a macro level, and then more of a micro level of sleepwalking, like, kind of like we sleep every day. Like, there's going to be times, every day or every week where we just fall into this sleepwalking nature of things, whether it's our routine or whatever it is. But I think what Elaine was pointing at, the notion that that's normal and that's okay, and that you can wake up at any time.
Yeah. And just struck me right now. I'm not actually sure if what I said before is if it struck me. What if sleepwalking? I'm just trying to look back when I think I've been sleepwalking, which is actually, I believe, for quite a large amount of time. But could there not be sort of it depends what you call it, sleepwalking, that actually you're just going through because actually everything is fine.
Mm.
You're actually already on the other side where everything is clear and everything is fine and there's nothing to be done.
Mm.
Could that not be also described as sort of sleepwalking in that sense?
Yeah.
Like you're just doing things, you're just, moving forward, and it's fine.
Yeah.
That sounds like a more sort of following your, I don't know, instinct, gut, whatever. It's kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, when you describe it like that, I think of the I don't know if it was Sid Banks or somebody else, but like once you find what you're looking for, like stop searching.
Yeah.
And to your point, like just enjoy it.
Yeah.
And once you're there, sleepwalk through it. It's fine. Like you're
Yeah.
already there. I mean, the truth is
Yeah.
we all are already there anyway.
Yeah. Because the idea of sleepwalk, at least to me, how I interpret the word, is a little bit sort of, a bit, you're sort of floating through things and there are no thoughts, really. You're just sort of floating through it, as it were, which to me sounds like fine.
Sounds nice.
That kind of nice, but differently than if you're walking around with your head in the fog, as Jamie says. I mean, I don't want to nitpick on this paragraph particularly. It's just sort of while we're here, kind of thing. Like that sounds to me like a whole different, kettle of fish. Walking around, it's like, oh my God, I can't see here. What am I supposed to be doing? Where am I going? And that just like, it's kind of sounds different. I don't know. Oh, go on. I was just playing on words. There you go. Anyway.
The last thing on that part that I highlighted was the last paragraph before the Tale of Two Burglaries story that says, we assume our thought forms have the same qualities as the material world, but they don't. They're made of thought, the reality principle, fleeting and inferior, literally the stuff that dreams are made of. Clarity and well-being are always there, always within reach, no matter how distant they may have seemed until now.
Yeah.
I think that's a great thing to be reminded of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the Tale of Two Burglaries is Jamie's example of like sort of just being on the border, on one side where he just didn't quite have the clarity, but he had enough clarity, like it was in reach. Go and ask, one of his mentors, Terry, go and ask him for help.
Yeah.
Because, and again, I obviously I relate when I speak, I think of myself. Now, had that been me, I'd have gone berserk. I'd have wanted immediately this person trying to rob my office to be caught and punished and hung from his ears or something else, or something and I wouldn't I wouldn't even want to be entertained by a coach or any mentor, just to make something, which the guy said, this, you're both doing this, you're both in business sort of thing, two different business models. It's just that your business model is different from his. And I'll God, do you want to like a stiff uppercut or something or what? Yeah, I wouldn't have even been willing to entertain anything. I'd have wanted to absolutely stay in the position of me being right, which never works. I can see that, and time again, it never ever works. And I see that with my clients. They want to be right. And it brings me back to what somebody said, you know, is it like the answer to that is, well, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? You know, yours the choice. But like, ooh, that, you know, really just reading that, you know, what, Jamie, someone came to your office and kind of, you just went off to your mentor and say, this is making you really angry, I'm going to get that sorted. Like, no. And I need to commit some sort of homicide here. You know, I need to do something.
Greg, we are not going to cross this woman.
Yeah,
we're not crossing her.
No kidding.
I so get it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Whereas I have to say, I read that and I thought, I'd be looking for the reason. I'd be going, I would actually be looking for the reason. Be like, you know, the person's probably hungry, or I'd be, after I calmed down, I'd be like, there must be a reason, you know. Oh yeah, I'd be all over that. And take my laptop, here you go. Take the other one. But as an example, I think it's great. And yeah, what wisdom from him to go say, I need to look at this, you know. And it was right there.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've been dealing with this thing for probably a few months now, where somewhere between when I go to bed and when I wake up in the morning, someone comes and parks on the street outside the side of my house. And I'm assuming it's a couple people. And invariably, every time I wake up and I look at the kitchen window, there's discarded coffee cups or garbage. Like, so somebody's parking there, hanging out, and then throwing their garbage out of the window of their car and driving away. And then I got to deal with their garbage the next day. And so, this morning I look out and there's a whole bunch of cups out there this morning, and I immediately feel my blood boiling, like, this, as if, like, these people are out to get me. They're intentionally. And then I start thinking about stuff like, who raised these people? Like, have they no consideration? And I'm like, I'm going to go buy like one of these trail cams that like hunters use. They put it on my tree so I can like get their license plate. And I'm going to hunt these people down. So God forbid anyone ever robs me. I mean, that's how angry I am over some garbage
from leaving a cup.
Yeah. Anyway, it makes me laugh when you read this and then realize how I'm allowing something so silly and innocuous to get my blood pressure up. And then I can just laugh and just go out and pick up the garbage and get on with my life, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And then you can come and talk to Elaine and Lynn about it, and how, the ball just rises back up to the surface, exactly. The natural buoyancy, because you're telling me, we're having a laugh about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then to kind of like Lynn, then I start wondering, like, these poor guys, I'm assuming they're guys. These poor guys, they must have had a hard life, or I don't know.
You know what I'll do next time?
I'll leave them a coffee.
I'll put the coffee ready for them.
That's right.
Wouldn't that be something though, if they turn up one day and you've got this like breakfast? They roll up outside your house and they're like, the dude left us breakfast. Not a shotgun.
They'd probably go on to the next house, because they'd be thinking something, that can't be for us.
Yeah. Oh, so funny.
Somebody else must be coming. Better leave the space free.
And the outside of that box brings us right to there. I mean, it's totally, when you're lost in contaminated thinking, sometimes experience feelings where agitation, urgency, that, it's all it is. It's just exactly that. It's, you make up the story and then you add to it and you add to it and you add to it. And then all of a sudden you guys are taking revenge and buying guns.
What kind of trap can I set for them?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What I like about that paragraph that I just started reading there is where it says, the worse we feel, the more urgent and compelling those external changes seem. And the first time I read that, I sat and thought about so many examples of where I've been feeling dreadful, and it's like, I have to do whatever 10 things I think I have to do. And I start doing one of those 10 things and ultimately never finish any of them, because I realize that wasn't what I had to do at all. what I actually had to do was probably calm down and release some of the horrible thoughts and settle myself and
Yeah.
take a breath, let it all bubble back up.
Yeah, or just realize where it was all coming from. Yeah.
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 I really like this little diagram on page 167, but you might take this out, Greg. I can't help looking at the diagram and thinking the ones on the bottom look like piles of poo.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
I did that as well.
Is that intentional?
There's an emoticon on the phone that looks like that. It's got little eyes.
It looks
in
like,
it.
yeah. So every time now I think about stuck in dilemmas and insoluble, I'm thinking like they're all the piles of poo and everything else is sunshine. So I'm pretty sure that's intentional.
That's pretty contaminating. Piles of poo, at least raw
It's pretty
sewage.
contaminating.
In the days of the germ theory, were pretty contaminating.
Pretty contaminating.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're doing pretty good on time, so maybe we can wrap this one up.
Okay.
How much do we have left? Oh, maybe not. Sorry, I thought we were already
at
the end. I thought the reality check was the end, but
no. Jesus, loads. There's loads.
No, there's a bit more.
Disregard.
Yeah. Okay. Bit of a longer one, this one. Yeah.
I did highlight under that reality check section below that diagram you're describing, Lynn, the line that says, as you see the situation more clearly, everything looks different, including what you've been perceiving as a problem.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, I was getting coaching from Chip Chipman, and it was the whole, it kind of puzzled me at the time, but it was like, his thing was like, well, what if this isn't even a problem at all? But I was in the frame of mind of like, no, but I want this to be a problem that has to be solved. Like I was so entrenched in identifying it as a problem. Anyway, I so appreciate the idea that much of what we think of as problems aren't problems at all. Like we've labeled them and made them into problems.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. And it's also in the fact that it's never thinking about the problem that's going to resolve it, but rather where the thinking that created the problem comes from that is going to resolve it, if you like.
Well, even, I mean, the idea that if like two sides of the same coin, problem and solving, or problem and solution, like if you think of it as a problem, inherent in that is that it needs to be solved.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't think about it as a problem at all, you don't need a solution. Like there's nothing to be done. Right.
Yeah.
Kind of like my story of these guys leaving trash outside of my house. It's like, I'll just go pick it up. I'd have to pick it up anyway, or I could just leave it there and let the wind blow it away, and it can become someone else's problem eventually. But when I look at it as a problem, I'm thinking, how do I catch these guys? How do I stop them from doing it? Versus if it's, it's not a problem at all. I don't need to solve it. I don't need to find out who it is or confront them or, teach them what their mother should have taught them.
Yeah. And it comes to mind again.
Solve it.
Yeah. Comes to mind again in Robert Fritz's Path of Least Resistance, when he mentions the idea again that there is no problem, or that problems and solutions will always go hand in hand, but that they're neither of them are a place to start. But the place to start is always a blank canvas, where creation begins. And it's from creation that a problem can dissolve, or just not even be perceived of as anything anyway. So the idea that, and this has stuck with me since I read it, this idea of everything just being, there seems to be something like, oh, I seem to have an issue today, or a foggy head, or there's a problem. If I can just switch into blank canvas mode, like, well, what would an artist paint now? What's he going to do? Sort of ask myself that. Then it can kind of rapidly shift me out of anywhere that could potentially ruin my day. You know what I mean? Mm.
What was coming up for me when I heard when you were both talking there was when, and from this whole paragraph, is somehow we have. I don't know anyone who doesn't actually, but if you guys are one of those people who doesn't, you'll let me know. When someone comes to us with something, and it could just be people have turned, a friend's on the phone or a family, and they're venting. They want to get something off their chest, and we hear something that sounds like an issue. We human beings, as there's not net if we go with there's nothing to do, there is no problem. We won't react. We just won't react. We'll hear it and we'll let it go wherever it goes. If we jump on the it's a problem bandwagon, it's then there's something to fix, and it takes on a whole life of its own. And what I always think of when I think of that is a distinction I heard many years ago was the notion of responding versus react. When you react, it's in the moment and it creates something. When you respond, there's a delay, and it gives you exactly what you just said, Elaine. It gives you a moment to bring back that blank canvas and kind of take a breath, and then it'll look like something or it won't. There's not necessarily anything to do. That's it just kind of made me think of all that, where we can help people be in a problem if we're in that space ourselves, I think.
I think of it as a trap, as like a coach. Like if you fall for, like you said, getting into the problem with the person, it's like, you're almost reinforcing that it is a problem that needs to be fixed, versus taking them upstream from it even being a problem at all.
Yep.
Yeah. I just have these, I can see my daughter in the back of my mind just saying, like, Dad, I don't need you to fix this. I just need you to listen.
Yeah.
Is something she's told me many times.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the only next bit I highlighted was on page 169 under life is not a problem to be solved. Where the philosopher remarked that life is not a problem to be solved, it's a mystery to be experienced. And I think if we can sit with that, it takes people upstream instead of staying in what they think's created.
That's something I've had to shift as getting into coaching, because in my business career, being a problem solver was kind of my, secret to success. It reminds me of, he who's good with a hammer tends to think everything's a nail, kind of thing. Like, if you're good at solving problems, you're just out there looking for more problems to solve.
Yeah.
I must confess, I don't really understand Jamie's diagram on this, the clarity of understanding and clarity of mind.
Well, good, me neither. And I've looked at it many times.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get him to explain it to me. But I understand the concepts of when you read through the distinction of clarity of thought versus clarity of understanding. It's kind of like a micro macro thing, I guess. At least that's the way I make sense of it.
I guess I don't know. I guess the idea is that when you've got clarity of understanding, it won't actually necessarily take you out of a thought generated perceptual reality when that reality seems like a problem. But when you've got clarity of mind, that's when the perception will change. Or you've got to, the higher the quality of the clarity of mind, the more you're experiencing peace, clarity, obviously, resilience, and all the rest of it, the clear you are on understand, because understanding by the nature of the word itself means that you have to have something to be thinking about to understand, to be understood. So it's you're always going to stay at the same level but on the other side. And that's how I understood it. But I think maybe we could even ask Jamie for more clarity on that. That's what I got from that. And it's it's a little bit now that I said it's about like yours is the choice. You know, stay where you wish, because yours the choice.
Okay, I can't say any more about that because I find it a little bit confusing, actually.
He references back to the Wizard of Oz, which he talked about at the beginning of the chapter, which I didn't mention earlier. But I was thinking the whole time I was reading this about what a dated reference the Wizard of Oz is becoming, and wondering what would be like for my kids who are in their teens, what would be their equivalent to the Wizard of Oz in terms of a reference point for them. I haven't really come up with it.
Might be something like Finding Nemo.
Yeah, probably. Or this morning I was thinking of maybe The Lion King, or but one of those Disney kind of classics.
Yeah, I kind of thought maybe Finding Nemo, because of the idea, the little one, although he's got his little short fin, and his dad's super overly protective, and like, you don't go out into the ocean, you've got to stay on the reef, and you just don't go out there. But like the kid's natural curiosity and resilience, and then all the stuff they went through with just made me die. The octopus, I could have died with the octopus that turned into a plant. That was just pure genius. But the story is that, but however, with like how neither the parent nor little Nemo ever lost hope that he would come back. And they kept, putting out the stones to guide them. I don't know, I'm getting confused with Dory here.
Yeah.
But
I can't remember.
I think you're blending the two together.
However, it was they had to get home.
Yeah.
And the octopus and the starfish and all the rest of it. And he went through, and the seagulls trying to get at them and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, he got home, and it was home.
Yeah.
And he didn't need to be anywhere else. So it could be Nemo, maybe.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm loving how you say Nemo, because I think of it as Nemo.
Nemo, isn't it? Yes, because it.
I wasn't sure if that's like a European thing or a.
Yeah, no, it would be the Italian pronunciation of the vowel sounds are different. Okay. That's all. Yeah, the Nemo. I mean, yeah.
We have we use in my family, like, we often joke with each other when one of us is trying to do something out of the ordinary. It's like I don't know, an affirmation in a backhanded way, where we quote Finding Nemo, where it's like, you think you can do things, Nemo, but you just can't. Like, just to highlight like the ridiculousness of limiting yourself because you have one little floppy fin. Like, no, you can still do stuff. Like, go for it.
Oh yeah.
And then often, if more so for my wife and I, to my kids, when they've been struggling with something, we just kind of chant that just keep swimming.
Yeah. swimming.
Yeah. So maybe Finding Nemo is the good replacement for the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
You can rewrite the chapter, Greg.
Yeah. That'll be a recommendation for Jamie for
revision 2.
The third edition.
Yeah.
In 10 more years.
Yes. And then Nemo will be out of date as well.
Yeah, exactly. I highlighted the bullet points where you are the dreamer, you are the thinker, you are not the dream. You are what's dreaming the dream. You are not your thoughts. You are what's creating the thoughts. You are not your experience. You are what's creating your experience. Mind, the power principle, the intelligent energy behind life.
Yeah. I must admit, and I'm happy to say, that I didn't, when I first read those, or when Jamie said those, or I read them somewhere else, or heard them somewhere else, like right at the beginning of my, let's say, journey into the 3Ps, I couldn't even understand what was being said. Like the sentence, "You are the dreamer, you are the thinker, you are not the dream, you are what's dreaming." I just didn't understand that. Now I understand it. And it was, I remember I was almost shocked, like, what is going on here? Because I don't know what's being said. It was really weird. Like I was, it was like Russian. I did not understand what he was saying. Not a word. Didn't make sense to me because I couldn't see that other side, that other part that is within us all. The you bit, the real you.
Yeah, it makes me realize how often I get caught up in believing that I am my thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's a great little reminder.
Yeah. Oh yeah, day to day, moment to moment happenings.
I'm going to jump to the thought experiment here.
Yeah.
Very end. So the thought experiment: isn't it a relief to realize that clarity, security, and peace of mind are always on hand, ready to rise to the surface no matter what, as soon as you insightfully realize that you're living in the experience of the principle of thought taking form this very moment?
Yeah.
I think for me, the key to that whole phrase is insightfully realize, because I know with my clients, they intellectually get that they're living in the principle of thought, that they're not their thoughts, that they're the one creating them, and so on. But they haven't yet insightfully realized it. They haven't got it. They know it, but they don't know it until they have an insight, and then the light bulb kind of goes on.
Yeah. And yeah, I actually underlined only those two words, insightfully realize, because of course, yeah. Which basically is what I was saying before, I just didn't get the sentence, but you are not the dream, you are what's dreaming the dream. But it's only when you actually see who the you is that you can understand the sentence. And that's the insight. That how you, when you see it, that's the insight. Otherwise, intellectually reading, yes, I know how to read the English language, which is what I was doing at first, just reading it with my intellect. I've learned how to read, so I read. And that's the difference between just realizing something and then insightfully realizing something, which is a fulcral point, I guess, isn't it? And then he goes on to mention what the research says about PTSD. I think that would be almost a podcast in itself, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it sure as heavens makes sense that, or at least to start considering the lot of so-called labels and diseases and things that are given to people, like here, have some trauma, here have some PTSD, here have some ADHD, and an example of such. A lot of what common knowledge and common understanding, and also what we know today in science, let's say, and processes and all the rest of it, and cause effect sort of situation, we now know is just not true, which is kind of inspiring. I think, or hopeful for
Hopeful.
people who do believe that they have, huge trauma, depression, ADHD.
Mm.
And I personally would go as far to say, and some well beyond, so-called scientists, well beyond recovery situations, bipolar disorder, this kind of thing, severe psychiatric conditions are definitely recoverable with simply a new perspective, which is given to us by the three principles, the clarity.
Did either of you look at this handbook that he referenced? I haven't done that.
No, I
To
didn't.
be honest, I didn't.
'Cause it sounds
I
pretty
didn't.
intriguing, actually.
Yeah.
Just the notion of post-traumatic growth is in
Yeah.
itself,
Yeah.
for people would be hopeful.
Yeah. Yeah, my consideration just stopped at the word PTSD. To be honest, I didn't then further up, but it was just so, the words were just inspiring enough to consider that, if you like. But it looks interesting. Yeah, could be worthwhile looking into.
That's our homework for today.
Yeah, why not?
No, it actually struck me when I finished the paragraph that I hadn't looked at it, and it does certainly looks interesting to me. In so many ways.
All right, well, that seems like a good place to wrap it
Today?
up.
Yeah.
That was a great discussion. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. See you soon.